A new bike lane proposal on Parkside Drive is expected to ruffle some feathers between the city and Queen's Park. City staff are recommending council endorse a plan for a nearly 4-kilometer-long bike lane on Parkside Drive. The bike lane is the result of the Parkside Drive study, which looked into improving safety on the road between Keele Station and the waterfront. Now, the proposed cycling route would take over a lane of traffic, something the province said it would not allow. For more, I'm joined by Pothen, Land Use and Land Development Program Manager with Environmental Defence. Good to have you today, sir. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
So I noticed some comments you made online on X, Twitter, about this. Pretty strong words. Can you reiterate what you are saying online and specifically calling on the Premier to do?
Well, I want to underline, first of all, that our comments weren't specifically about the Parkside Drive location. They were about the entire network of bike lanes that we've fortunately developed over the last few years, and about the network that's planned and needed. Since we finally started putting them in the places where they actually work, where they're actually useful, which is major streets that run most directly from A to B, like Bloor Danforth, Yonge Street, and University Avenue, these streets have become the backbones of our commuter network and freight transportation system. They're the way that a delivery person gets food or groceries to your door. They're the way that a package or a letter gets delivered to your door. They're the way that your kid, your 12-year-old gets to tennis or dance when you're with your 5-year-old at a different event, and they can get there on their own. So the caricature of the cyclist as a hobbyist, some sweaty, yuppie, adrenaline junkie, decked out in sunglasses, Lycra hawk pants, and a racing jersey, who feel superior because they're fit and spent $3,000 on a carbon fiber racing bike. That's never been true. The person that's going to be using the bike lanes, the person whose life is jeopardized when there isn't a protected bike lane, is a lower income, racialized worker who's just getting to a construction job site early in the morning. It's a food delivery worker. And those are the people whose blood will be on the Premier's hands if we start ripping out these essential life-saving lanes of traffic, which are protected bike lanes. The other piece of this puzzle, of course, is that if we go ahead and rip out these bike lanes, we will be killing tens of thousands of units of housing. Our team has really been working hard digging beneath the housing shortage that's plaguing Ontario right now. And what it boils down to is that it costs so much to build housing. And a huge part of the cost of housing, apart from building greenfield, it's not viable to do because you have to build all the infrastructure from scratch, is the cost of building concrete buildings, which is what you have to do when you add parking. We have all the construction capacity that we need to end the housing shortage, but we don't have enough capacity if we are building those units with parking in them. And the only way we need to eliminate minimum parking requirements, but in order to actually make it viable for people to live in homes that don't have parking, is to provide that even when transit isn't running, even when it's not convenient, there's going to be a safe, reliable way to get around. And that way is bike share. That way is bike lanes. That's how cities work when they're able to actually add enough housing to meet housing need. There is no path really to delivering, to accommodating all the people that Toronto needs to accommodate, to moving all the people that Toronto needs to move around, if we're wasting all the road space on these massive vehicles that we're using usually to move one or at most two people around. It's a lot easier to fit those people on the roads if we get them on bikes. It's the only way we're going to be able to keep deliveries moving. And it's the only way that we're going to be able to unlock those avenues where the city has legalized, after many years, mid-rise housing finally. We're not going to be able to end the housing shortage if the Premier goes ahead and rips out these bike lanes.
Yeah, because of course we're talking about this legislation that is expected to maybe be tabled as soon as Monday. The Premier, the Ford government, saying that it's going to, be watching new bike lanes that municipalities want to implement, of course, because they say it's impacting traffic flow. And also now we heard the Premier saying that he might even go ahead as far as to rip up existing bike lanes. When you look at that in the city of Toronto, For argument standpoint, the transport minister, and by the way, we have reached out to both the minister, the premier's office for comment, have not heard back. The transport minister says there's been an explosion of bike lanes since the pandemic when there was less traffic on the roads, and we couldn't see the impact of what bike lanes do to traffic until now. What do you think about that argument?
Well, I mean, listen, bike lanes are the reason why we don't have a heck of a lot more traffic on the roads. They're the reason why people in my neighborhood don't need to drive to work. They're the reason, it's a point-to-point way of getting around that takes so much less space. The result of taking bike lanes on the road will be two things. Number one, you'll be forcing people to use slower and frankly, just impractical means like trying to drive to work again. That will mean more car traffic. That'll mean slower traffic because cars just take up more space. But the other thing we're going to see is folks who do continue to cycle, either having to take the lane, which means they'll have to ride right in front of existing cars, that will slow things down. They'll be competing for the same lane rather than using a different lane, or even worse, getting bullied by aggressive motorists into riding in the gutter or riding at the edge of the lane, which is how cyclists gets killed. So that's what will happen. And if you think having a bike lane on the road slows things down, talk about dead cyclists on the road, talk about ambulances, and talk about all the people who are using bike share today to get to work being forced into cars instead. That is a recipe for gridlock. That is a recipe for a Toronto with no traffic solution. My team and my colleague, not my team, but another team at Environmental Defense, has worked out what it would take to get 3/4 of car trips in Toronto off the road, our existing car trips. We can get rid of those car trips by investing in transit and road infrastructure like bike lanes, and by densifying existing neighborhoods. That's how, if we want to solve the traffic shortage, we have to make it possible for people to get around without driving. And that's what the premier seems hell-bent on doing the opposite of.
Yeah, giving people choices. I take your point. You did, in your post as well, ask the premier to reach out to you or your colleague to listen to your solutions to gridlock. Have you heard from him?
We haven't yet. We hope to. Listen, we are not a partisan organization. We speak to people from every party, anyone who will talk to us, and we are not ideological. We are digging into the economics of why we can't get housing built. We are digging into the actual technical issues on the road that are clogging the roads. And so we've actually worked out solutions. So we know what it would cost. We know what the government would have to invest in. And we know, where it would have to, or how it would have to structure the spending in order to achieve really huge reductions in traffic and congestion, not over a super long term, not over 10 or 15 or 20 years like these highway schemes, even in the premier's wildest dreams, would deliver those changes. We're talking about being able to deliver major reductions in traffic volume and road congestion, getting rid of 75% or more of car traffic on the roads in Toronto by 2035 if we make the right investments. We've got the plan, and we'd love to share it with the premier.
Okay, interesting stuff. Phil Pothen, Land Use and Land Development Program Manager with Environmental Defense. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.